In May, Roger Corman passed away at the age of 98, and the influence he had on the world of filmmaking was immense. Known for producing low-budget films on quick schedules, he helped jumpstart so many careers of noted directors as he encouraged them to make films that entertained audiences while keeping costs reasonable. For several years, Corman produced movies for American and International Pictures, but in 1970 he decided to start his own distribution company with his brother Gene, named New World Pictures. The intent was to continue to make the kinds of popular drive-in and grindhouse movies he was known for, but also expand his horizons a little bit with the films he picked up. A lot of New World's early releases were exploitation and horror movies with titles like Angels Die Hard, Beasts of the Yellow Night, Private Duty Nurses, and Women in Cages. However, New World would branch out with some of its acquisitions. Corman picked up the American distribution rights to Ingmar Bergman's Cries and Whispers. The film was widely acclaimed and received 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. This proved New World could handle both B-movies and more sophisticated and prestige fare. Over the next few years, other acclaimed foreign films they would release in America included René Laloux's animated film Fantastic Planet, Federico Fellini's Amarcord, Francois Truffaut's The Story of Adele H., and Akira Kurosawa's Desu Uzala. As for homegrown productions, one notable release from New World was Jonathan Demme's directing debut Caged Heat. Corman had initially turned down the film as he felt the Women in Prison film had run its course by that point. Demme would finance the film himself, with Corman eventually agreeing to distribute the movie, which was seen as one of the better entries in the genre and helped get his directing career off the ground. New World distributed the adult animated film Down and Dirty Duck, although they did not give it much release or promotion and was widely panned. More successful was the science fiction movie Death Race 2000, which did very well, exciting viewers with the violent automobile action. A notable name who rose up the ranks at New World was Joe Dante. He started his film career for Corman editing trailers. When Corman bet that he could make the cheapest film in his studio slate, Dante and another trailer editor, Alan Arkish, were signed to direct the satirical movie Hollywood Boulevard. The movie was their directing debut, and critics appreciated its parody of Tinseltown. The movie ended up pulling a decent profit, and they would make a few more films for New World. Arkish went on to direct Deaf Sport and Rock and Roll High School, and Dante directed the Jaws ripoff Piranha. That movie was particularly successful and even impressed Steven Spielberg, who would later hire Dante to direct Gremlins. Corman would also give Ron Howard a shot at directing when he agreed to produce his first feature, Grand Theft Auto, which ended up doing quite well and thus started Howard's career shift from actor to full-time director. New World would continue to put out sophisticated films during the late 70s. These included the psychological drama I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, which received an Oscar nomination for its screenplay, the musical Little Night Music, which won an Oscar for its adaptation of Stephen Sondheim's songs, and Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata. New World would also release some of David Cronenberg's early films, notably Shivers, The Brood, and Scanners. Of course, one of Corman's frequent traits was wanting to replicate the success of a big hit with a smaller budget version. He produced Battle Beyond the Stars, a movie born from the success of Star Wars, and even though it was seen as an obvious knockoff, it was nonetheless a solid hit at the box office and received particular attention for the special effects created by a young filmmaker named James Cameron. In the early 80s, New World also released The Slumber Party Massacre, which was inspired by the teen slasher movies popular at the time and the sex comedy Screwballs, which came about after the success of Porky's. In 1983, Roger Corman wanted to get out of distributing his own films and returned to being merely a producer, so he sold New World Pictures to entertainment lawyers Larry Kupin, Harry Sloan, and Larry Thompson, although he would retain the rights to the library. Corman also signed a deal to release his next batch of movies for New World, although he would later sue them for the way they distributed his films. Despite the new owners, they would continue to release low-budget genre films. Some notable releases include the film adaptation of Stephen King's Children of the Corn, the cult sci-fi horror movie Chud, and the teenage prostitute movie Angel. New World also released Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind in the United States, although not the version you might be familiar with. Instead, they released a cut titled Warriors of the Wind, which removed several scenes and altered the script. The poster even had characters who were not in the movie. I feel like I'm looking at an image from Masters of the Universe. Miyazaki hated what they did to Nausicaa so much, he made it a requirement that any foreign distributor who wanted to release his films had to agree to not cut anything. Throughout the 80s, New World would attempt to expand, including owning Marvel Comics for a few years. They released a lot of movies, but a large majority did little business at the box office, were dismissed by critics, and have largely faded into obscurity. With that said, some films received attention. Larry Cohen's horror comedy The Stuff has become well regarded, although it was not a hit when it was originally released, which Cohen attributed to New World selling it as just a horror movie rather than as a satire. New World edited and released a new version of the Japanese kaiju movie The Return of Godzilla, titled Godzilla in 1985. While they did not recoup that money on the theatrical release, it sold very well on video. Meanwhile, the horror sequel, Creepshow 2, pulled in a decent profit, as did Return of the Killer Tomatoes. A comedy that was hit with a lot of controversy was Soul Man, starring C. Thomas Howell, a law student who pretends to be black. African-American groups protested the film for its use of blackface as a main plot point. Despite that, the movie still performed well at the box office. New World had another success when they handled the American release of Clive Barker's Hellraiser. They would also release the sequel the following year. They would give animation another go when they picked up Filmation's Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night. The makers of that film would actually get sued by Disney, who claimed copyright infringement, but they lost because it was frankly a ridiculous lawsuit. The movie itself did not impress critics and flopped at the box office. The large number of flops in their slate would lead to some serious financial problems that would even affect films they picked up. Heathers was given a very limited release and did not make much of a dent because of their difficulties in marketing and distributing their films, but it would eventually find a bigger audience on video. Meanwhile, they were supposed to distribute the Felix the Cat movie in theaters, but kept delaying the release until finally dropping the film, with Disney ultimately picking up the video rights. In 1990, New World would sell its library to the company Transatlantic Pictures, and afterwards some of their yet-to-be-released films would be distributed by other companies. The science fiction comedy Meet the Applegates went to Triton Pictures, the Marvel Comics adaptation The Punisher was handled by Live Entertainment, and Killer Tomatoes Eat France was released direct-to-video by Fox. The last movie produced by New World was the erotic thriller Die Watching, which went direct-to-video. With their film operations dwindling down, the owners decided to shift their attention to television. They acquired a bunch of affiliate stations and produced a number of television shows during the 90s. Even though they'd sold off Marvel Comics, they retained Marvel Productions, which was renamed New World Animation in 1993. The company produced a number of animated shows based on Marvel Comics characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Fantastic Four, as well as Biker Mice from Mars. Eventually, New World made a deal with Fox to sell most of their stations to them, which resulted in them being turned into Fox affiliates. In 1997, New World was purchased by News Corporation, with the company folded into Fox Television. Meanwhile, the animation library was placed under Fox Kids, which was eventually acquired by Disney a few years later. So at that point, New World ceased to exist. But what about the New World Pictures Library? Who currently owns that massive catalog? Well, as you can see, the rights are kind of all over the place. Roger Corman held the rights to the pre-1984 library for many years, until he eventually sold them to Shout Factory in 2018. The 1984 to 1989 films that had been sold to Transatlantic eventually wound up under the ownership of Lakeshore Entertainment, which would then sell the library to Vine Alternative Investments, the parent company of Village Roadshow. Disney also owns a few New World productions. Like any independent distributor, New World Pictures had its ups and downs as it tried to excite audiences with its science fiction and horror movies, as well as the occasional award-winning prestige fare. However, it all started from Roger Corman's passion for filmmaking and giving viewers what they wanted at a reasonable cost, and his contributions to cinema will continue to be remembered forever.